Greetings, everyone. Guys, there's a problem in modern fantasy that no one likes to talk about, something that they've left out. And even though I haven't watched this video yet, Bloomsday here has decided he's going to tackle just that. What could it be? Could it be the lack of good heroes? Could it be the lack of compelling villains? Well, we're going to see what Bloomsday says about it and if I agree with him or if I disagree with him. So without further ado, let's go.
Picture this, if The Lord of the Rings would come out today, tell me how it would look like. Probably not very good. You want to know why most modern fantasy stories fail? Because
Alright, I'm going to tell you right now, if it was people on the right saying it, it would be due to there's probably going to be way too many woke bosses. There's people on the left doing it or saying that there was a problem with it. It's probably not enough of the message. So let's see what he says.
of racism and how utterly
Was not expecting racism.
afraid they are of writing about it, as if they're one tweet away from being cancelled. Before we start, I would like to say that this is not an anti-woke rant or that I'm glorifying racism in any way. The point of this video is that if your world has no social tension, it has no weight.
Social tension is pretty important to have weight in a story. Like, you can't just have, heroes and villains going up against each other without like a social dynamic for the story to actually be truly interesting. Oh man, I used to love World of Warcraft so much.
So let's start with World of Warcraft because I love WoW so much. Oh my god, it's amazing. Jokes
I mean, it was.
aside, in WoW you've got countless races that hate each other. Their beliefs are different and everybody wants to kill everybody. Or that's how it used to be before, but the basics are still there. And here's why it works.
Yeah, the two factions against each other. I mean, Sun Elves are a bit in a weird spot. Yeah, there's some. Okay, anyway.
Differences are the entire point. That's why the faction conflict felt believable at its peak. Everyone had a worldview that clashed with someone else's worldview, just like our real world. When you enter Azeroth, you instantly understand the friction when you meet a player from an opposing faction. You want to bury that weapon in their face just because they're different. An orc doesn't simply walk into Stormwind like it's Mordor. So
Good reference, man.
if WoW is built on faction conflict, of course it uses prejudice. But what about a story where racism is directed at you? Well,
I never thought about it as a racist thing when it came to The Witcher. To the fact that, yeah, he's different, but he's still from the area around there.
welcome to The Witcher. The Witcher is one of the best examples of fantasy racism because it's not subtle at all, and it's not afraid to show it. Geralt is a professional monster hunter, but socially he's treated like a monster too. He's a mutant. He's other. Townsfolk call him mutant and spit in his path, just because he is different. That's what most modern fantasies often forget, that this social difference creates empathy. If you want to teach someone empathy through social or political ways, this is the way.
Okay, so your baseline for this entire video so far was racism. And being politically or communally othered, I would not say is exactly the same. With The Witcher, I think, I'll see what you say, but I think primarily The Witcher isn't so much about a racism situation. It's being seen as other, as in with the Norwegian and, European folklore thing of basically mixing with monsters.
What makes him the perfect protagonist? People hate his kind, yet they still call upon witches when monsters are at their doors, because The Witcher was never about monsters. It's a society where humans are convincing themselves that elves, dwarves, halflings, non-humans are less than people.
All right, the elves, dwarfs, and halflings, yes, that was definite racism. But Witchers start out as humans and are a necessary evil, kind of, so...
society collapsing and picking someone to blame. And the genius is, The Witcher uses prejudice to create moral complexity. Half the time, a monster isn't even the real villain, and the game and the books go out of their way to show you this, to show you human cruelty, and to you, the reader, to empathize with Geralt or Ciri or whoever. That theme only works because the world is morally ugly in believable ways. If everyone got along and differences didn't matter, then Geralt would just be a cool guy with swords doing side quests.
It would definitely make him a way more boring character. Yeah. I mean, they could still write him in a way where he wasn't boring. I mean, you've got plenty of characters that are just cool guys with swords doing side quests. I mean, prime example would be like Link.
But because the world hates the other, every choice Geralt makes is heavier. Even Geralt's neutrality becomes a lie he tells himself. And I want you to understand that The Witcher's racism, and even the whole world, feels real because it mirrors our own.
I do like The Witcher's neutrality code because it tries to make it so they can be either a good or bad character based off of the game. I know the books do its own thing, but like when it comes to The Witcher neutrality code, it's a way that the game can literally make it so your good or bad choices are just based off of you, the player. And I think that was so clever of them to do that way.
Now I'm going back to the original fantasy grandpa and talk about how The Lord of the Rings handles us versus them. I think everyone agrees that Tolkien did something simple yet incredible. But it's believable because the world behaves like a world with history. There are borders, peoples, languages, cultures, alliances that don't automatically make sense, and that's why they're compelling. Even the good side isn't on good terms. You've got humans, elves, dwarves, people with ancient beef. Legolas and Gimli hate each other at the beginning just because they're different, and yet they...
Oh man, I love that line right there. I do. Yeah, no, racial differences was huge. We also got to take into account the time frame that the books were written and everything. That was...
reach a friendship.
Tolkien was such a damn good writer.
The story makes their relationship meaningful because it has weight behind it. The racism here isn't always spelled out as these guys are racist, but the suspicion and prejudice is there. It's baked into all grudges, and we don't trust your kind. That's the thing modern fantasy keeps forgetting. You don't need to do a racism monologue and preach about how it's bad. Just do history. Don't invent the holy grail of everybody in this world is different, yet they somehow like each other. That's not how you send a message to your audience. It comes out cheap. A dwarf not trusting an elf is fantasy racism, sure.
I mean, I cannot disagree with that at all. Like, too much in modern writing, we have the everyone holds hands and sings Kumbaya thing. They try to tackle it, but it's so on the nose now. Like, look at Dragon Age Velgard. Like, everything was so on the nose that even the people they were trying to pander to, at least in my community, were not a fan of it.
But it's also a believable consequence of centuries of cultural differences. And that, my friends, is depth, which leads us to the most human fantasy world ever written. And we all knew it was coming if you've been watching my content. Game of Thrones.
I'm going to sit through the Game of Thrones section. I'm going to tell you guys right now, never been a fan of the books. Like, I'm okay with a little bit of political drama, but the amount of politics in the books, it was literally, in the first one I was sitting reading it, it was like 3/4% political, and then 1/4 of it was maybe some cool crap on the side, and I never made it through it. And due to my dislike of the books, I only watched a few episodes of the TV show.
Game of Thrones works because it nails identity to the bone. People look different. Tyrion is a dwarf with one black eye and a green one. He's hated. Everyone calls him imp because he's other.
You are an ill-made, spiteful little creature, full of envy, lust, and low cunning.
Even his father hates him. And
telling him he's full of low cunning was not good. Like, Tyrion was a pretty cunning character.
Not so much because of his looks, but because Tyrion's mother died.
I'm trying to figure out exactly how he's going to tie this one back into racism, though.
Giving birth to him. Jon Snow is another great example. He's a bastard, and in Westeros, people look down on them, calls them treacherous. In A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, you get this peasant-level hatred that's so raw. It almost feels like someone finally remembered Westeros is full of social imbalance. I let Raymond Foss away on his rant again because it's just brilliant.
They're incestuous aliens, Duncan. Blood magickers and tyrants who've burned our lands, enslaved our people.
I'm gonna skip ahead. Because I'll stay here. I'll stay here. I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. I want to see if he can tie this one back into racism.
Dragged us into their wars with no respect for our history or our customs. Every pale-haired brat they saddled.
You know, this is like bringing modern issues back into medieval writing. Like, this is like, oh, they're lizard people. Oh, they're extraterrestrial space elves and all that stuff. It's like, oh my God.
On us has been madder than the last. Gods know how. The only honourable thing a Targaryen can do for this realm is finish on his wife's tits.
That line matters because it shows you something modern fantasy keeps brushing away as too much. People hate outsiders. They hate dynasties, bloodlines, and crucially the idea that someone is above them. Also, another favourite of mine from the same show, Prince Baelor Breakspear, who in the books is literally looked at sideways because he has dark hair from his Dornish mother, and people mutter that he's more Martell than Targaryen. That's insane, right? He's still the prince, still noble, but difference sticks to him anyway. So why does this feel so real? Because Game of Thrones...
This is against houses, though. This was never a race thing when it came to Game of Thrones. Being Dornish was just, you know, yeah, I guess the Martells are from a different area, but like, was it really a race thing?
doesn't pretend differences don't matter. Now compare that to a lot of modern fantasy adaptations where everyone somehow looks like they came from the same place, but also look like they came from completely different places at the same time, with no world-building explanation. I need to say something very carefully because people get stupid about this topic. Having diverse actors in fantasy is not the problem. Representation is good, seeing different faces is good. And if you're going to cast a world like it's modern Los Angeles, you need to build a world that behaves like modern Los Angeles. So you get something like the Witcher TV show, where villages that should feel isolated and culturally specific sometimes feel like a random sample of modern Earth, and it clearly breaks the illusion because the world doesn't feel geographically real. And this is why George R. R. Martin is relevant, because he's one of the few modern fantasy writers who understands the cheat code. George R. R. Martin has talked about this kind of thing for years. The idea that fantasy still needs a sense of realism, of internal coherence, because otherwise...
Okay, so are you or are you not for diversity? Because like, I don't mind diversity in things. It's a common misconception people throw my way when it comes to the diverse and what is there and what is not. The problem with a lot of the diversity stuff is if it is a very specific cultural area, or if it's a very specific, like when you showed The Witcher and the villages in The Witcher and everything, The Witcher is set, you know, in Europe, you know, in the Europe, Norwegian areas, basically in a time period when you wouldn't be seeing all of the diversity. So it makes it a lot harder to actually have the diversity and make it stick. But when it comes to other things like, you know, The Little Mermaid, I didn't give a crap about The Little Mermaid being black or whatnot. It was a Mediterranean story, you know, freaking mermaids, and a lot of the places, mermaids are weird. But essentially, there were way more diverse in the Mediterranean than they were in the middle of Norway and Europe and all that stuff when those stories are being made. But yeah, no, yeah, I don't really have too much issue with diversity when it comes to videos. It's just like when you make a documentary about somebody, I don't know, say like when they made Cleopatra not Cleopatra and they called it a documentary, that's a bit of a problem. Anyway.
Otherwise, it becomes a theme park of nonsense, and his world reflects that. Different regions, peoples, cultures, and the tensions between them are part of what makes Westeros and Essos feel like real places. And whether you love or hate how he handles every detail, the core principle is solid. Fantasy should not avoid human ugliness if it wants to talk about humans, because racism, sexism, this ugliness are ancient human behaviors. Medieval-inspired fantasy is rooted in real human history. So when modern fantasy tries to make a medieval world with zero social tension, it's just not believable. It doesn't feel like life. Racism is evil. Fantasy racism is not cool, but it's the strongest tool world building has to create weight. And the irony is, you can write racism in fantasy in a way that condemns it, critiques it, and makes the world richer without glorifying it. In fact, the best fantasy does exactly that, because a fantasy world that pretends humans are human is fake. And if your world feels fake, your story has no weight, which means nobody gives a damn about it. And that is the real death of fantasy. Alright, if you watch...
Well, guys, that is another one of Bloomsdale's video. Or not Bloomsdale, my bad, Bloomsday's videos. Yeah, I already did the villain archetype most games can't handle. And it was a great video. I've probably got at least one or two more of his videos I want to react to in the future. This guy's really good at breaking things down. I think even I messed up when it came to this one. It's just about the tension. Yes, he starts it off by saying racism. I kept trying to tie everything back to racism, but having social tension in a story is extremely important, because without the social tension, you don't have real tangible tension throughout the rest of your story. Yeah, you'll have your heroes going up against your villains, but if nothing's going on in the background, you're basically playing the most boring game of D&D that's ever happened. But anyway, guys, go check out Bloomsday's channel. There'll be a link in the description down below. He does really good work. His video essays are some of the best I have ever seen. And with all that being said, guys, go ahead, like and subscribe to my channel, like and subscribe to his channel. As you can see, I already threw a like down on his video. And remember, guys, like always, be good to each other. We'll see you in the next video. Peace.